The Labour of Love update just gave a huge buff to the melee class as a whole, but there's one weapon in particular that springs to mind as having received a drastic rework. I'm of course talking about the Terra blade. We're going to be going through the changes to this weapon and looking at just how strong it is now in today's short video. The most obvious change made was to the projectile it fires. Previously it fired a green beam that resembled the sword itself. It had limited piercing capabilities and you had to be very specific with where you aimed to hit your shots. Now it fires a large green wave with near unlimited piercing but at a much shorter range. The weapon also received a damage nerf, dropping from 95 to 83 base damage. These changes have overall made the sword into more of a crowd control weapon rather than a boss fighting one, as you can probably see by the gameplay on screen now. However, another much more subtle change to the sword was its projectile fire rate. Previously the sword would have fired projectiles at a rate much slower than that of your melee swing speed, but now it fires exactly one projectile whenever you swing the sword. This is a really big difference. It means that having buffs that increase your melee attack speed also increase the number of projectiles fired proportionally. This makes the sword much more powerful in medium to long range combat. It got me thinking about whether melee attack speed focus builds could be a powerful alternative for this sword, as opposed to the standard damage or crit rate builds. I built a pre-Moonlord melee loadout that focused primarily on melee attack speed, including having violent modifiers across the board. I also put a couple of defensive accessories in there, and gave it a try against some endgame enemies. What you're seeing right now is the Terra blade up against the Frost Moon. I was playing on a Master Mode world with the Fuller Worthy seed at the time, so these enemies are seriously tough. As expected, it performed amazingly against the crowds of weaker enemies. Its single target DPS was not amazing, but not terrible either. However, it's reasonably easy to line up multiple bosses and damage them all at once. Overall, this weapon performed amazingly under the circumstances, and I decided to take it a step further. Could the new Terra blade take on the Master Mode for the worthy Moonlord? Well, the answer is no, it didn't take him on. It absolutely tore him apart. One thing I noticed during this fight is that you can easily line up more than one of Moonlord's eyes with the projectiles to maximise the DPS. The projectile does not have very much range, but by moving in a given direction and firing in the opposite direction, it's still possible to hit all of Moonlord's weak spots, even his furthest away hand. It's also extremely easy to hit your shots given the wide spread of the projectile, meaning you can focus more on dodging the boss's attacks. Even though this weapon has clearly been shifted more towards a crowd control role rather than a single target damage one, the sheer number of projectiles I was firing as a result of my rapid melee swing speed chewed through the final boss of the game on the hardest difficulty and made it look like a walk in the park. What do you guys think? Is this weapon OP now, or are there still better boss killers for the post-Plantera stage of Terraria? Could melee speed replace damage and crit rate as the preferred modifier for melee users? And do you prefer the new or old version of the Terra blade? Personally, I'm a huge fan of the change. Comment what you think and remember to like the video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys very soon.